Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is Calian's webinar on synthetic training environments for delivering collective and high readiness military training. My name is Jordan Miller. I'm the marketing lead for global defense at Calian, and I'll be your host and your moderator today. So over the course of the next hour, we're going to be talking about synthetic training environments for delivering collective and high readiness military training. We're going to have discussions from Jay Ballard, our military training and simulation lead, Dan Turcott, our director of modeling and simulation training, Gordon Maxwell, our I3 specialist, and Eric Norton, our technical solutions architect. For the delivery today, excuse me, the introduction, which is where we are now, we'll then move into a lessons learned from modern warfare. This is going to talk about the things that have been learned from contemporary conflict and how Calian takes those lessons learned and turns those into training as quickly as possible to give the training audience the most realistic experience possible. We're also going to talk about the Canadian Army Simulation Center. They've been a Calian customer since the late 90s, from the days of paper maps and everything being very, very manual. From there, we've developed tools and developed the end-to-end digital experience that we currently deliver today. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that happened. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Calian approach. Our approach to training is really end-to-end, from the concept development through to delivery and after action. We're going to talk a little bit about why that's important and the advantages that that gives to defense customers. We're then going to have a demonstration, which is going to be a bit more detailed overview of how exactly we do the development and delivery of training. And then we're going to round things out with a discussion about some of the new capabilities that we're evolving for military customers, and a summary of the customers and the exercises we have delivered. With the time left over at the end, we're going to open things up for Q&A, and we'll be taking questions from the chat throughout that process. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jay Ballard. Jay is going to be talking to us about the lessons learned from modern warfare and how Calian integrates those into our training experience. Jay, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. The importance, like, why are lessons learned important? Well, you want to be a learning organization. If you're not, and you're doing something wrong, you're going to continue to get have pain inflicted upon you. Think of BlackBerry or Kodak, companies, Polaroid, companies that didn't necessarily adjust quickly, then were overcome by events because they didn't learn from what's going on in the market or looking out at what's going on in that particular operation. Think of the Three Stooges. Every time Moe goes like this, the double eye poke to Curly, and pokes him in the eye the first time, if Curly doesn't start doing this and blocking from then on, he's going to get 2 fingers in the eyeball for the rest of that particular episode. So yeah, you want to be a learning organization, and it's important. Now, what we try and do is take what's going on currently and apply that to the synthetic environments that we generate for training. That means, all right, looking to see what are trends, what are battlefield trends that are going on, what can you pull from current operations. There's an entire generation of military officers that have spent their basically 20 years doing counterinsurgency, which is a much lower volume when you think of supply requirements, ordnance requirements, and just being able to handle battlefield casualties. What we're seeing in Ukraine is an overwhelming difference, orders of magnitude higher in the demands on sustainment, as well as what you need to do to solve that. Now, those we'll take a look at the what I've pulled out, the pillars from recent warfare. One's morale and the will to fight. Rand did a study in 2018 on the will to fight. It's a great study. I recommend everybody take a look at that and read it. And it talks about individual performance and will to fight, unit, a nation, and it goes through what are the different things that you can plug into that. Now, if you're looking to incorporate that into training, you can do it through a variety of different. You can plug it into different simulation systems and different parts. Leadership. Or character performance, you can reduce it or increase it depending on what you want from performance for that particular unit. The second bit is logistics. I kind of hinted on it earlier. When you're looking at its height, when Russia was firing 60,000 rounds of artillery per day in Ukraine, that is 10 days worth of U.S. procurement for the year for ammunition. So that gives you an idea. You're going to run out pretty quickly unless you've got a huge stockpile to begin with. And even if you have a huge stockpile, 60,000 rounds a day runs out in a hurry. That's why you're seeing Russia go to North Korea to buy more artillery rounds. Now, air defense and air superiority are extremely important. Air superiority guarantees freedom of movement for a joint force. If you don't have air superiority, everything you're trying to do, every move is being opposed or challenged. You're in contested environments. If you're trying to fly, if you're trying to insert troops with an air mobile assault, and the helicopters, you don't have air superiority, the helicopter's going to be vulnerable, and you would be losing, depending on what kind of lift platform you got, 35 to 50 troops each time one of those helicopters gets shot down. You have to have air superiority in order to enable all the other joint forces to move and your ships to come in closer to shore. Otherwise, they're threatened. The threat is very high. Now, air defense, you're seeing in Ukraine, the variety of missiles that are being shot, the Shahed 136 Iranian loitering munitions are extremely important. And the same thing with the KH-101 cruise missiles. They're being fired, and if Ukraine can't shoot them down, they're completely vulnerable to this. They're having pretty good success, about 80 to 85% on shoot downs, but that's still 20% of a large number that are coming in. Now, targeting and joint fires become extremely difficult if you don't have air superiority. You can't park a UAV overhead the enemy and surveil and look at that, what's going on, and pull targets out of that, because that UAV doesn't survive very long unless it's a small commercial off-the-shelf UAV. But you need to turn that information around. Since you can't park overhead of the enemy and look, you have to quickly, as soon as you see something, it's got to go up the kill chain and immediately have a weapon sourced against it. Now, the last two are commercially sourced ISR and operations in the information domain. I basically refer to that as fighting in a fishbowl, where all of your moves are going to be seen through the commercial satellites. There are several hundred thousands of satellites are being launched. You look at SpaceX, they fire up, they'll shoot and put 50, 55 satellites in orbit each time they launch a missile, instead of the one, or you're looking at the CIA satellites coming overhead and 30 minutes everybody run and hide. That's not the case anymore. Everybody's looking. You've got commercial sources that are looking at and trying to say, hey, we see something happening on the ground. So you've got to figure out ways to do your moves more clandestinely. So that pretty much is what we picked for major topics or major points from high combat warfare.
No, that's great, Jay. I think that covers really what we've seen so far. Just for everybody watching, the lessons learned you've seen, that has been an iteration. Jay and I have been working on that for a while. Jay obviously leading the effort on this, but you can expect us to be taking new lessons as we see them and as they become apparent, and integrating those into training. So there will be an update on this, I'm quite confident, as the conflict continues and as we have more lessons to learn coming out of it. So with that in mind, we take the lessons that have been learned, we take the trends in the security environment, and we integrate that into training for military customers. So Jay, sticking with you, I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the Canadian Army Simulation Center, really one of our main defense customers that we've been with, since the mid-90s. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that process for us and for them, from paper to delivering digital training.
Yep, certainly. So 1995, Calian won the support contract to support what was initially a joint training organization, and that has grown from just a handful of people to over 625 people that are either full-time employees or independent contractors that we use quite a bit. So initially in 95, not a whole lot of digital capability. There were computers, but they were not set up to help with military training, and simulation systems just stand alone. So we're using, basically the Army at that time was using paper maps and putting plastic over and drawing on them with markers and using that for their traces and figuring out which direction they're going to move. Same thing with their operational planning and factors analysis and everything else. So it was all analog and all standing through with rock drills, having people move around on a giant map to simulate what they're going to do. Now, that has since morphed as obviously computing speeds have greatly increased, and we're seeing a lot of different simulation systems on the market, and and they're all basically standalone. So if you have a constructive simulation, which is showing an icon on a map, and it represents either a company or a battalion, a brigade, division, whatever it happens to be, that's all moving underneath of it. But that way you just have a high-level view for the headquarters to look at it. But if you're also trying to train either a joint terminal attack controller or have UAV feed coming in for targeting, you need a virtual simulation. It needs to be flying over like a first-person shooter and pulling out all those targets. If you don't have those tied together, then they're just running in a silo, and it's difficult for the training audience to be immersed in what's going on. Now, immersion, why is that important? Because several studies have been done on military training that show that if someone is immersed in a scenario, they retain much more of it. If they are interacting with people and organizations they expect to, they now have buy-in, and that transfer of training. So what you want them to get out of the learning objectives happens if they feel like they're immersed in it. So that's what we try and do. This picture is from Unified Resolve exercise in Valcartier in 2015. And you can see hundreds of people in there. This is exercise control along with some of the flank players that actually respond to orders from the headquarters. And you're saying, obviously, there are hundreds of computers in there, a bunch of people that the blue players are outside in their vehicles, and they're plugged in using their own network to control this. But in order to make this as effective as possible and efficient, so if the military is spending money on training, they want to get their dollars worth, you get the highest transfer of training with the most immersion, which happens when you put one synthetic environment in place and let the training audience go with it.
No, thanks a lot, Jay. That's a pretty stark difference between the two photos, looking at everything with paper and now to everything in a digital space. Next, we're going to talk about the how a little bit. Jay took us through a lot of the what. We're going to turn now to Eric Norton to talk to us about how Calian delivers training, how we conceptualize it, how we develop it, and how we engage with the military customer at every step along that process. So Eric, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. And so, our end, really starts with our end-to-end advantage. And, that's really just steeped in, the 25 years of training experience that we have. And it really comes down to the talented employees that we have both across Canada and in Europe. Many of them, working on their second careers and have, a deep level of experience in their career. And so that formulates a lot of knowledge and experience that we then use to kind of, do things like exercise planning, exercise management, and that's really where it starts. We take that training experience and build that into our exercise planning. We've got some tooling in that, and we're going to cover that with Maestro ED. And of course, when we start looking at Sim to C2, that's where we start to look at how we create these effects. And having that interoperability and having the flexibility to be interoperable, I think, allows our teams to really, as Jay was talking about, provide that realism. And of course, while we're running things and we're in delivery, providing that real-time feedback with data analytics, being able to answer key questions while we're in training allows us to iterate and change what we're doing to better, suit the training outcome. And of course, after it's all said and done, we've got this large amount of data, and we look at after-action review, be able to create products and help our customers really figure out, where things went well and where things could be improved. Of course, we're always evolving these capabilities. We're always working directly with our teams. We're working with their customers. We're working on real requirements. And that in itself is also iterative. So we're always, everything that we have capability-wise is always a function of, what was needed in the training environment, and, in order to kind of deliver what we need to. Of course, Jay alluded to this evolution. Well, we've seen an evolution in the complexity of training. So, back in the day it was, it was a little bit more simplistic, single training audience, simple melt mills. And now we see a lot more organizations coming to the table that all want to get some level of training out of that. And we need to make sure that we manage those interactions appropriately. Of course, the operating environments, have certainly gotten more complicated, more challenging with technology, and the training environment needs to reflect that. So, we're always making sure that those two things are in sync. And so we're always adding new technology as we go and evolving them. Of course, we're always bringing, people together, the right mix of people and experience and process with all this technology support. And that's really where, Calian really shines. We do have, there are people that talk about end-to-end solutions, but really, Calian's the only one that can really pull all of these pieces together. And of course, we work with every customer individually. We look at their organizational objectives. We look at what kind of operational tools they have, what current capabilities they have, whether they have their own SIMs or we need to bring them. We take those inputs, we blend everything together, and what that looks like for every customer is different. And so, and then of course we get our outputs. And in the short term, it could be higher readiness. It could be, further training requirements. And of course, in the long term, we can look at, funding decisions and doctrine changes or process changes. So, that really just highlights, Calian's end-to-end advantage. Of course, everything starts, with the training needs analysis, aim, scope, and training objectives, really defining the conditions for success. We start to look at who's playing and who do we need to control so we can provide that synthetic wrap. Of course, we always establish a team, to kind of, a cross-functional team, whether that be on the scenario side or the technology side. We always have to work with subject matter experts from other areas and other organizations. We do whole of government exercises. So we bring in lots of people. It requires lots of coordination, and we've got great tooling to help with that. We start to design high-level themes and storyboards and incidents. And then we have a writing team that comes in and starts to flesh those things out, establish timelines and whatnot. And that really then ties into, and we have a technology team that works hand in hand with that and make sure that right when we start to identify the effects that are required, we start to make the right choices around simulations. We always pick sims. We're agnostic in that fashion, so we pick what makes sense to deliver the effect that's required, because providing fidelity costs money. So we're very conscious of that. So we provide what is needed as needed. And of course, these changes can be dynamic, right? So certainly in the scenario, as the training audience reacts, we may need to change, and we need tooling that's easy to use and allows us to make those dynamic changes as a team. And so again, this whole thing's iterative, working with the customer. And, it's really a proven process for us. We've seen lots of fads come and go, but we've been doing it for a long time. And so we just evolve with it, using seasoned, experienced experts, and of course, using modern, evolving capabilities.
Oh, thanks a lot, Eric. That's interesting. Just, from the perspective of how we do it, how we develop it, I think that's a real Calian differentiator. Jay talked about integrating the different scenarios, integrating as much recent and relevant learning experience. But Eric, your part about anchoring that all in a really robust process. So no matter what the scenario is, no matter what the technology needs are, Calian's going to deliver the same high fidelity training experience, no matter what the customer needs. We're now going to jump over to a video we filmed in our demonstration space. So this video walks through a lot of what was discussed up till now, but with more detail. This is a video, so there won't be any questions available in that space. But if you do have questions, please do type them into the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. So for the next 20 or so minutes, we're gonna show you a little bit more about how Calian develops, designs, and delivers training.
What you're going to see over the next 20 minutes is how Calian takes learning objectives for a training audience and applies technology to create an immersive environment for that training audience. We're going to show you a variety of different ways that we do this. Some of it is just system agnostic. It doesn't really matter what kind of simulation system it is. And some of it is Calian technology that drives it and makes the interoperability happen. So you're going to get a full overview of this. This is our Road to War demo. It starts with Maestro EDE, which is the exercise development environment that allows us to design, develop, deliver exercises. I've been on a bunch of different exercises, 60, 65 of them over my career. And if you don't have something to help organize a complex exercise, it really can get off the rails. And you're going to see from the developer how that's all put together. And then after Maestro, what you're going to see is how we take constructive, virtual, and live simulation, tie them together to hit all the different training audiences, from the individual soldier in the field up to the command post and the headquarters training. We do that through a system agnostic approach, where it doesn't matter what kind of simulation system is being used, whether it's Abacus or VR Forces, JCATS, whatever it happens to be. We tie them all together through Wiki. Now, the different simulation types is constructive simulation, which you see an icon on a map. Underneath of that, which you don't necessarily see, are the forces involved there. Those are all tracked by the computer, and that allows you to look at larger force, zoomed out, God's eye view, looking down as forces move, icons moving on the map. Virtual simulation is like a first-person shooter. In this case, we're using Virtual Battlespace 4, VBS4, which allows a UAV to fly over looking at targets, allows a sniper to work, or a joint terminal attack controller to control attacks against enemy forces. And then this can all be tied to live simulation, which is live soldiers in the field carrying weapons that have either lasers or sensors that allow them to shoot at the enemy, or the enemy to shoot at them. So you get live scoring and umpiring based on that. This can all be tied together. You could have a constructive, virtual, live simulation event going on with forces in the field, overwrapped around with constructive simulation, a division, a corps, whatever it happens to be, and then all tied together with the virtual sim. As a result of Wiki putting that all together, tying it, driving the command and control system that nation's using. The next thing as we move along is the command and control used by each nation. All forces have their own command and control system that headquarters use to command their forces and to issue orders and to review and see how things are going. For Canada, it's BattleView. For the UK, it can be Combat or Citaware HQ. You're going to see Citaware HQ here, but we've also drive pretty much any of the frontline types of command and control systems in the world. You'll see Wiki does interface with and bridge. So that means that the training audience can then use their own systems as we're going through, driven by the two different simulation systems that are interoperable because of Wiki, and Wiki then drives those command and control systems that can be used by the training audience. And then finally, at the end, you don't learn anything unless you go back through and review what you've done. So Aramis is for after-action review, which will capture with the audio distribution system, will capture the audio. You got text to audio, and you're able to see what orders were given, where those forces were laid as they were maneuvering. And finally, Midas, which is data analytics. You're able to go through and pull data from that engagement. If there was a fight going on, or seeing how the forces are doing, are they keeping together as they move along? So those two powerful tools, which are also Calian technology, go into feeding an after-action report. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to hear from the experts. I'm just the pilot. I'm not the expert. I didn't develop these. And you're going to get to see and hear from them here in just a minute.
So with Maestro is a collaborative tool that allows your team to work together and provide a home for your training and all your exercise materials to build a scenario that provides effective training value to the training audience. And so you use it from design, development, and delivery. Maestro provides a secure environment for this work. It can be used on-premise or in the cloud, and it can be used by all levels of users. Users who are new or subject matter experts who are not familiar with training, they can come in and use this tool, as well as your internal experts who are familiar with training And the tool is very good at customizing the functionality and making sure that it's easy to use and everybody can collaborate in the same space. So the first tool I'm going to talk about is our exercise manager tool. It's our design tool, and it allows our leadership team to set the aim and scope and training objectives for the exercise. It's where we start to figure out the timelines, the rough timelines of the exercise, what time zones we're going to be working in, who's playing and who we need to control, so that we can, when we're building the scenario, we can start to establish lines of communication between events and injects in different organizations. And we can also make relationships with the training objectives and higher level exercise objectives. So the next tool is the exercise workbench, and that's where we do all of the writing for the exercise, where we do the development. And that's where we can establish the higher level themes, the events or incidents, and the injects. And so there we can manage timelines, and we can drag and drop, we can create items on the timeline directly. It's very easy to use. Allows teams to quickly establish these relationships between data. Our inject editor is very rich, allows teams to articulate a lot of detailed information. We can automate actions through triggers. And so there's just a lot of functionality in our inject editor and the data that we collect and the relationships that are made in development. The tool we use in delivery is our exercise control tool, and that's where you can see the entire timeline of everything that's happening across all of your scenario. And so we can see all that. You can do wargaming rehearsals for that prior to delivery. In delivery, we have an injects by day tab. Allows you to really see day to day everything that's happening on a schedule, and you have quick access to everything on there. You can open up all the materials directly from there. You can manage the delivery of communications to the training audience. You can action your triggers, your automated actions, and you can make quick adjustments to the timeline and reschedule things, because that's really important. Things are very dynamic in delivery, so our exercise control tool allows our teams to really control the environment and make sure that we can deliver efficiently and accurately and on time. One of the benefits of Maestro is that it's a web-based tool and it can be used in a distributed fashion. So whether you're doing your development work or whether you're in delivery, it can be used wherever it exists on a network, either on-prem or in the cloud, and it allows teams wherever they are in the world, across time zones, to come in and use the tool. There's actually timeline conversion tools in there, so if you're looking at a timeline and you want to see it in a different time zone, it can do that. And it just allows organizations to cut down on their travel and better efficiently manage the collaboration that needs to happen. Also in our exercise control tool, we have a feature that helps us deal with and manage observations. So observer teams often need a way of knowing when and where to be when the training audience is doing something. And so because we have this scenario and we have the training objectives, Maestro is the perfect place to manage observations, and we've got great functionality to enable that. And so when the writing team is actually doing their work and they make relationships between events and injects to objectives, it actually creates a planned observation, because we know that that's when we need to verify that the training audience is doing what they need to do. And so all the observer team needs to do is come in and they have an array of planned observations that just need to be scheduled and managed, who's going to be there and when. And then, of course, capturing that observation at the end. And, of course, all this data can be exported to third-party systems, or it can be printed off. And, of course, you'll see with our other tools, you can upload materials into the observation within Maestro. So if you've got any videos or audio recordings or anything else to support that observation, it can all be put in one place. The other thing that our observations feature can do is that it can help exercise control teams themselves to evaluate and observe some of the ways in which we've delivered the exercise. So that's another aspect of our observation feature. It can help multiple teams look at the exercise through different lenses. So Maestro is a fundamental tool that we use to deliver training, and our teams work closely with the development team to make sure that we have the right functionality and features needed to continue to evolve how we do training with our customer. we listen carefully to our teams and our customers to make sure that the functions, the features do what they need. Again, Maestro is a web-based tool that we can use in a distributed fashion. We have a variety of ways of deploying it to meet whatever environment that we need to be working in.
So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Viki. Viki, the product, which stands for the Virtual Command and Control Interface, is the glue that sticks or that binds everything together. In essence, what do you have so far? In terms of the road to war, this demo, is you have multiple clients, whether it's the Army, the Air Force, potentially even the Navy if you're doing a coastal exercise. You have maybe Marines, you may be in a joint exercise, you may have coalition forces, name it. It's massive. Compound that with a bunch of or several different OEMs, all providing different systems, all with slightly different technologies. Now you can follow standards as much as you want, but in the end, what you really have is a massive data interoperability problem. And that is exactly why Viki was conceived and designed, to solve that problem. In so doing, we have core framework and core products that will essentially allow the trainers to compose the complex synthetic training environment that they need. So how does Viki solve that? Well, to begin with, Viki is a core data interoperability framework which works based on different adapters. So for every single system in the complex environment, there's probably an adapter that we have or we can do to link to that system in order for the right data from the right system to meet or reach the next system that actually needs to consume it, and back and forth as required, whether it's audio, video, or just straight data, chat systems, UAV systems, and just training systems. Moreover, and more importantly, especially for the training environment and in order to reach the operational readiness and high readiness that the troops need, we even stimulate the command and control system. And in so doing, we can link any simulation system, multiples of them, and feed the necessary command and control systems, even provide custom feeds to any particular headquarters subsection, ALIX, fire control, name it. As long as there's a data requirement to move it from one system to another, Viki will sit in the middle and broker that. In the context of Viki, if you observe in the interface, the system view interface, you will note that a host of systems can be connected together on a per connection basis. Every single connection to every single system will maximize data collection, and it will filter data, handle bandwidth issues, and whatnot. And as a result, you're able to compose the environment that you need for the complex training environment, feeding all of the necessary systems with the data they need to consume. Once that environment, or once that is set up, and once that is really performed by the exercise control people and the exercise setup people, really what the next step is getting the training done. In the current sit or cur-sit view, then you're into the environment, the training environment that's been created, and from that point on, Viki becomes a massive data collection and monitoring tool. It can, as a result of its data collection capability, it will later be able to feed the after-action review systems to maximize the training outcomes. So in a nutshell, or in conclusion, that is why with Viki sticking in the middle to compose the complex training environment that you need, we're able to link all of the various stakeholders, clients, from the Navy to the Air Force to land forces, whether it's for one nation, multiple nations, whether it's a NATO exercise or whatnot, we can link them together and have them train effectively together with their C2 systems.
Okay, so I'm here today to talk about after-action review with two tools that we use called Aramis and Midas. First of all, Aramis is an after-action review tool that records data from the Viki database and then puts it through to the after-action review, enhancing the learning experience through a structured AAR. This then is cementing the takeaways and reinforcing learning for that whole after-action review. This after-action review is for everyone at every level. So, Aramis, what does it do? Aramis records the Wiki data, the data that comes off the Wiki database, and gives you the ability to play back that data at either a single speed or a multiple of speeds, all depending on the application that you're going to be using the after-action review for. And what's the value in that? Well, like in a high-performance sports team, they'll go back and re-watch their videos of last matches and opponents' matches and see that and make decisions based on that. And that's exactly what Aramis is doing for you. It solidifies where things are going well and identifies where things are going wrong and where we have areas for improvement. This improves performance and informs training further on down the line. So, Midas, what is that? This is a data analytics tool that provides real-time analytics of the Wiki database. It gives the observer the ability to look at dashboards based on various different things. For example, rates of movement, fratricide, CSS holdings, and fatigue, as well as a whole host of other things. Where Aramis provides a rich qualitative AAR, Midas provides a quantitative set of dashboards that can be accessed during and after an exercise, with the ability to look at past exercises and do analytics between two different units based on the dashboards that they've provided. So, after-action review provides leaders and exercise controllers and the training audience with the data to understand what happened during that exercise and learn from the experience to improve for next time.
Okay, welcome back everyone. So that was the overview of the end-to-end solution, the tools we use, the features we provide, and the value it provides to our customers. So next up, we'll be going to Eric Norton. He'll be talking to us about developing new capabilities. As I mentioned early during the presentation, and then as we heard with Jay, Calian is constantly evolving the technology and the solutions that we develop. And you know, in the face of evolving lessons learned in the contemporary operating environment, it's you know, today's no exception. So we're continuing to develop new capabilities to deliver maximum value for our customers. And Eric, if you could tell us a little bit about that, I will turn things over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Yeah, my favorite thing is talking about new capabilities. And of course, you know, we're hearing from lots of organizations about digital transformation. We've kind of talked a little about, but you know, it's a bit of a buzzword, but the reality is that there are some value when you think about what that actually means. And when you look at the end-to-end, which we're really good at, it's about trying to efficiently weave through this this training in the most efficient way. And as you know, you kind of saw a little bit when we talked about Maestro, there's a lot of you know, related data and things that kind of connect together. And so being able to have one person work on one thing here and have that work transition through other people who have a piece to, or a part to play in that, to be able to contribute to that in some efficient way. And so you're going to see deeper integration of capabilities end to end. So you're going to see us, when you look at all of those capabilities, and we've got lots of capabilities we haven't even talked about today that kind of also fit into this picture, but integrating those, thinking about when I deliver an inject on Maestro, being able to see it through to after-action review. Of course, continue improving the data analytics. You know, there's still lots to be gleaned from the data that we generate. So you're going to see us make more improvements in that. Certainly with Midas, there's also some, you know, of course, another buzzword in artificial intelligence, which is big today. And you know, we're kind of, because we've got access to such a rich set of data, you know, we're primed to look at and take advantage of technology when and where it makes sense to do so for our training. Of course, we want to make it easier. Obviously the training environment's complex, and it can be complex to set up and configure and test these capabilities. So making that easier, we've got a tool called Ringer that allows us to set this stuff up and get better at quicker. The quicker we can set this up, the more we can focus on training, the lowers the cost. So, I think that's important. You're going to start to see us look at applications in operational settings. When we look at data interoperability, Vicky's such a good tool that we've been using primarily in training, but it can serve a lot of other needs as well. Data is data. So you're going to see us focus on that in the future. And of course, lastly, enhanced wargaming through simulation. What sort of capabilities that we have today that we can bring to enhancing wargaming? There's been a lot of talk about wargaming in the last year. And so, we have some projects ongoing to look at that, and it's kind of exciting to see how we can bring improvements to that. And then, of course, my favorite thing, Maestro EDE. So we've been working and investing in that tool quite heavily. And of course, we just released a new feature at the last of 2022, and it's called Storyboards. And it really is, again, getting back to that digital transformation strategy, being able to leverage visually some of the data that's put into the system with Maestro and being able to brief that, create products, and then actually carry on. So what you're seeing here is an event timeline template. So it's ability to storyboard that, to be able to brief. And of course, all these fields can come from either other parts of the system, or they can generate other parts of the system. So in this case, we can take the storyboard and we can then, an event and then generate a set of event and injects that can then be taken by the writing team. And they know what they're doing, why they're doing it, because it's all linked to training objectives. And so, it's about reusing that and that data that's already in the system and creating these visual products. And you're just going to see us continue to take advantage of these intricate data relationships that we have. And the more we do, the more things get more efficient. The more people can work together and focus on what's most important, which is delivering that training value. And that's really what underpins all of our new development of our capabilities is, delivering for the customer.
Well, that's great, Eric. Just looking at that storyboard, I like that, just at a glance, you can see where everything ties in. You can see what the event is, what it links to, what the end state is, just in terms of keeping people apprised and informed on the development side. You've really got all the data you need right there, just to add to that sense-making capability on the development and design side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So last section before we get into the Q&A is back to Jay. Jay is going to give us a little bit of a rundown on the customers that Calian's delivered for and the range of exercises in terms of types and scenarios and that kind of thing that we've delivered. So Jay, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Yeah, Calian being a Canadian company, you can obviously expect that we do quite a bit of work in Canada, and that's true. But we also do it not only with the military and Department of National Defense, but we also do it with the government's agencies themselves. So, for instance, we do exercise Unified Resolve, which you saw the picture of, extremely large. It's a brigade headquarters training event. Leading up to that is Virtual Ram, Virtual Bear, Leon Numerique in Valcartier, a bunch of different specifically focused, multi-layered exercises designed to hit a certain level or certain, level one being an individual soldier, sailor, airman, marine, going up to 6, 7. Now you're into the headquarters and the decision maker, the brigade commander at that point. So they're designed along those lines. Now, in addition to working with the military and the variety of different exercises that are there, we also work with the provinces for something like Op Nanook, where the province and territories are looking to exercise their emergency management and consequence management during domestic exercises up in the Arctic. And that's close consultation with the government and with those provinces and local governments to make that exercise come off. We also do binational work with the U.S. as far from a NORAD or CANAR perspective, defense of the North through air power, and we exercise that and exercise Vigilant Shield each year, and that's coming up and will be delivered here shortly. And you can see a bunch of different flags there. We have a bunch of different nations that come in and play with us for the larger exercises, but also we've recently done work with the ARC, Allied Rapid Action Corps in the UK. They're tied into NATO, and you see the NATO flag on there. We do a lot of work with NATO itself. We're shifting. Canada's focus is now going to more of it being interoperable, more so with NATO, and doing more training integrated with NATO forces while that's happening. Steadfast Defender series coming up in 2024 is probably going to see more Canadian participation in it at that point. And Australia is tied in with us as well, where we do, and they come over and do a lot of work with us. So as you can see, it's not just military, it's not just Canada, but we're integrated with all these different forces and throughout the world.
No, that's great, Jay. It's, sometimes I forget just the breadth of the kind of exercises that we've delivered, whether it's domestic response, the Olympics, multinational with NATO. There's really, a wide spectrum of scenarios and types of exercises we've delivered for clients around the world. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. We're going to get into a little bit of Q&A now. So the first one we've got here, Dan, I think this one is for you. It's a question about integrating metaverse technology. Now, I know you were down at ITSEC in Orlando in November and December, and you saw a little bit of that sort of concept percolating a little bit. I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about that.
Right. Indeed. It's the talk of the town. It's impressive, but as you can expect, the concept of the metaverse is currently oriented towards entertainment, and it still has a ways to go technologically to make that happen and become widespread. From a military perspective, and to sort of operationalize some of the concepts, I think there's merit. There's room for that to grow. But it's going to take a bit of time. I think the first use case from my perspective that would come off the top of my head is the ability to distribute headquarters. So if your headquarters were operating in a metaverse, then obviously you get the distribution effect. So you reduce the target footprint. So basically there's possibly some pretty good use cases, but there's a bit of a ways to go to make that technology robust enough, ruggedized enough, and able to deploy that close enough to the front lines so that it can be sustained. But as a concept, very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's always interesting to see sort of on that hype curve where we go from the concept to figuring out how exactly it applies for military simulation and what the limits are and sort of timeline to delivery and that kind of thing. Next question we've got coming in, Eric, I think is for you. It's about the storyboarding, and the question is about multiple organizations having access to the storyboards while they're developing. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, really, we allow teams to work however they need. So if depending on if it's the same exercise and we have multiple organizations, well, they all have their ability to go in there and create their own storyboards and really drive their part of the scenario how they need to see fit. If it's different organizations on different exercises, well, there are ways in which Maestro can manage that as well. And so it really depends on at what level are we talking about accessing that featuring capability. But there's certain ways of segmenting and kind of limiting access to information. And then, of course, on an exercise, there's certainly ways of allowing those teams to work together in the same space. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. I mean, the real takeaway there is that operating in a distributed environment, no matter how that architecture is developed and who has permissions, we can do the development no matter where you are. Is that correct, Eric?
Yeah, no, as long as, we can hang, the capability on a network, and as long as people have access to that network, then certainly in the cloud, we take a lot more precautions and a lot of security, accreditations, a lot more, we have to pay attention for that. But yeah, I mean, especially in the whole government exercise, right? Because not every organization can connect to certain military networks, or beyond military networks. So sometimes it's really useful for that in that sort of situation.
Excellent.
If I could just jump in real quick, the thing about Maestro that I really like the most is its distributed nature. Is you're able to develop that, so you could have writing teams in a bunch of different time zones, all contributing to the exercise. You can track as far as the exercise director goes. They can look and they can see how the injects are coming in. How's the writing effort going? Are we on track? Are we way behind? Are we way ahead? And then when it comes to actually delivery, if the training audience is having a problem and maybe they need a little bit of time, you can just take that inject and move it, slide it left so it's later. And when you do that, then that information is spread to everybody, all of exercise control. They know, okay, this inject's now delayed by 2 hours. Everybody's on the same sheet of music like that. You don't have to send out an email and then wait for replies back from everybody else. And we've used it, and it's a proven tool that we've used over the years.
Just to tease that out a little bit more, Jay. So if we're in the middle of an exercise, the training audience is responding to the traffic that's going out. If there's, an emergency, for example, outside of the exercise, or the exercise needs to halt just for 30 minutes, using Maestro, we can basically push everything out. That's correct?
Yep. Yeah, you can go, okay, we're gonna halt until we turn things back on again.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Just want to be clear on that. Sticking with you, Jay, we've got another question sort of about scenarios and development. I know at the start you talked a lot about the era of COIN being largely behind us, and that, the lessons learned that you presented was mostly conventional state-state conflict. I wonder if you could just talk to us a little bit about sort of post-conflict reconstruction and looking back into that sort of operations below the threshold of state-to-state conflict and how the Calian solution can deliver for that.
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, you can design an exercise for any one of the stages of conflict, and post-conflict recovery, you do planning for it. So anyone that's gone through a war college, they've done operational planning process, and they go through from the start of the conflict all the way through to the end, and then you've got a handover at some point. Well, you can use any of the different simulation systems here. You can design the exercise to then be at that point. And how do you do the handover from the forces coming in to do reconstruction? And then you get the experts in, the governmental experts, to coordinate with the military, and you're able to work through just like in real time, or what you would expect to see if you were actually there. You can design that exercise to go through all those different aspects.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, that's sort of, we talked about being technology agnostic, but I think we could probably safely say we're kind of scenario agnostic depending on what the customer needs.
Well, yeah, actually, I mean, if you look at some of the exercises we've done a tabletop exercise for cyber ministry in Canada. We've done other work, war gaming with border services and other basically figure out what are the training objectives. What do you want the audience to get out of? Doesn't have to be military. Then you can design your exercise around it. As long as you have training experts, and that's our secret sauce is two things. One is that we've got experts with the deep experience of putting exercises together from design, development, delivery, and then we've got the technology to tie everything together to make it an interoperable, integrated synthetic environment. So we got the expertise to put the framework in place, and then the networking and technology to make it all play out for the training audience to get an immersive experience.
Excellent. Next one is touching on the data question. So Eric and Gordon, I don't know who among you wants to take this, but Eric, you mentioned in your presentation about the sort of sheer volume of data that an exercise generates, and looking at analytics and the potential for AI. I'm wondering if you could tease that out a little bit in terms of, what kind of data does an exercise generate? Where can AI help? What can we do in after action review? And how do we make sense of all of that data that's generated from an exercise?
Yeah, sure. I'll start, and then Gordon, you can jump in after. Of course, when you look at data, every sim is generating its own data and to a certain fidelity. So if some sims are generating more data and there's more entities and there's more things that they're doing over time, that's all that data is being captured in Wiki. So you've got whatever sims are in there are generating data. Maestro has a set of scenario data, actions that are being taken by the exercise control team that in and of themselves are important in the overall picture. You got what is being changed in the C2 system. And so you've got all these different sources of data. You've got chat logs, you've got audio logs, and these are all happening over time. And so you want to be able to capture all that stuff, and you need a good data collection plan in your exercise. So making sure that, that those get prioritized in the technology planning for the exercise so that data is available. And of course, once you have that data, then you can start to be creative with it. You can start to ask important questions of that data. And so that's something that we do now, and we explore that, and there's more to be explored in that. And because sometimes you find out, well, I wanted to ask this question, how do I get the data to answer that? So that requires us to go back and look at that data collection plan and see what kind of system can generate it. Of course, when we start to look at AI, that's a very interesting topic, Jordan. And of course, the way that can impact, of course, if you're going to train your own model with AI, that's certainly you're going to need access to data. But there's certainly other ways in which to employ AI in parts of this puzzle. But that probably would fill another webinar. So,
fair enough.
Absolutely. There's also, or depending on which simulation you're talking to and which connection that we've got. So if we're only using DIS, for example, in Wiki, then there's a limited amount of data that's being collected. If we're using something else like HLA, we're getting more. And if we're using something that's like specific for a system, like we use the SDK for VBS or VR Forces or Abacus, we're getting more data specific from that system. So we get the ability then to leverage that with the analytics tools and with the after action review.
And
okay.
Jordan, if I can just jump in real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you get into AAR, the one thing, Eric, Dan, and Gord have all mentioned the different aspects and the amount of data that's coming in. The importance of it is, and my background is naval aviation. I've done Red Flag, Air Warrior, and Air Wing Fallon, and Top Gun. And when you finish up at the end of that flight, the majority of the learning happens when you do the AAR or the debrief. You're able to take all the data that's been collected, see the positions of the airplanes, hear that critical call. Is that hostile? Am I able to shoot? Or what did they just say? And then now your closure rates are such that you can't get the missile off. It's a structured, well-delivered AAR accounts for the majority of the learning in that entire operation or that event or mission.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jay. It's more than just data. Like, to your point, it's about going back through, looking at everything that was done to be able to take kind of a detached view to figure out what worked and what needs improvement. Mindful of time here, we're coming up on the end. Just time for one more question. Dan, I think this one's for you. During the video presentation, you talked about integrating operational tools, specifically C2 and voice recognition. I'm wondering if you could give us just a quick overview of how that works.
Right. So in essence, what we're talking about is Wiki as a data interoperability framework will link systems. However, we have additional products, for example, the audio distribution server, which collects the video piece, the audio piece, the human voice piece, and that allows us to communicate between simulated radios right over to operational radios. And people operating in one or the other or using one or the other would not know the difference as to which environment the other one is. It's that seamless. But the point being is, as we collect the human voice audio, we also do speech to text. So we transcribe it, and we have the ability to auto-populate the communications log and basically leverage and mine the data that comes from that. It actually reduces the cognitive load on duty officers or duty personnel in headquarters that have to monitor these nets. You can actually monitor more than one net easily as a result of the tools being operating or doing a lot for you. And you can gain a whole lot of additional insight. Now, it's a new capability. It's evolving. We're in early days in terms of leveraging the full potential of it, and there's lots of opportunities to grow it. But in essence, that's an example of how we can use what initially might be a simulation requirement, but turn it into an operational requirement, and basically use it on the high side or in the actual real live environment for operational reasons. And that's exactly how the ADS is going to be employed.
Yeah, just to be clear on that, when we talk about using operational systems, we're talking very much train as you fight, using the same radios, the same equipment, but taking that data into a simulated environment.
Exactly. The initial requirement for it was actually to provide the live environment, the real people operating in the field, back into the simulated environment. But as it turned out, and in so doing, we ended up creating a product that was that provided seamless integration across all audio sources, to the point where you can have simulated radios, real military, radios, but you can also add software-defined radios, walkie-talkies. You want to do domestic operations, you can link your troops with people on the ground operating in under civilian disaster conditions and whatnot. So it's seamless. At the end of the day, it's about linking the right people for the job operationally, and it can be done with that. Given the recording, given the speech to text, you can basically conceive of the ADS in that context as a 911 call center on steroids, because this isn't just a one-to-one call. This is a everybody-to-everybody call. We do VoIP as well. So it's a very, very powerful tool about to be unleashed.
Excellent. Okay, we're just a couple of minutes over. So for those of you whose questions I didn't get to, my apologies on that. You will be receiving an email in the next few days. That included in that email will be a link to a video of this webinar. There will also be a white paper in PDF that shows Calian's overview of synthetic training. That will be embedded in the link that you get. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn or visit us at calian.com/defense. So on behalf of myself and the rest of the team, thank you very much for attending today. If you would like to get in touch with us, there will be links embedded in that email. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.